You are now listening to Vibe Selection with Kyra, where you can get the real on today's hot topics.
Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Vibe Selection. I am your host, Kyra, and on today's episode, we go into part 2 of the reality of a clairvoyant experience with my guests, Jacqueline, Jean, and Pat. And remember, everybody, if you like to buy any Vibe Selection merchandise or apparel or graphic tees, you can do so at www.teespring.com/vibeselection. Follow me on Instagram at I am Kyra Mahoney, or you can like and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Kyra Mahoney, or if you like to support the Vibe Selection podcast, you can do so at www.patreon.com/vibeselection. And, we're bringing up a lot about, religion and kind of playing that into metaphysics. And that brings up a good idea for how metaphysics is directly, engulfed in religion in itself, no matter whether you believe in Christianity, your Judaism or Buddhism or whatever, religious sect you're kind of drawn into. It's essentially the same thing. And I've discussed with other people about how they believe in, let's just say, for example, Christianity, how, at least when I was taught and growing up, is that you don't talk to psychics. You don't talk to anybody that's not God or look for answers about the world except for God. And how I've had to kind of let certain people know that if Jesus was able to do a lot of things such as heal people of leprosy and all of these miraculous things and rose from the dead, and if you read the Bible, there's a lot of metaphysical things that have kind of transpired, and how that's directly related to our experiences in the world, and how that's not something that people should be afraid of, and they should be a little bit more open to that. And like you were mentioning earlier, that when people think about God, they always say, are you even talking to God if you're a psychic? How are you getting your answers? Are you actually getting your answers from someone legit, or is it something demonic? And how I've almost had to explain and get in heated arguments or heated debates with people about how it is essentially the same thing. Have you had any experiences where you've had to kind of open up people's minds to what it really means to be religious, and how that's really engulfed in the same thing? It's not something that someone should be afraid of.
Oh yeah. I've known a lot of very devout religious people where we've had wonderful talks and debates. And, when we talk about Jesus did all these things, okay, well then if we're just talking about Jesus, then you leave Jewish people out because they don't believe that Jesus was, the Son of God. So let's even go back to the Old Testament. Moses had a magic off in front of Pharaoh. Okay.
That's amazing.
They did 8 magical feats where all 8 of them, Moses and these 8 Egyptian magicians, did these incredible feats. Now, it wasn't until the last one where Moses threw the staff on the ground and it turned into a snake. The other ones could not replicate that.
Wow.
So that shows that way back when, we're talking 5,000-6,000 years ago, depending on timelines, that even back then they knew that magic was real and that people had the ability to do that. But then you look when the Judeo religion was started, how after Moses talked to God in the burning bush, that's when the rule came down, no magic. So if they had to put a rule in place saying the average person should not conduct magic, then obviously magic existed. Because the Bible in a way is a history book. If you really think of it, because we proved a lot of things from the Bible actually have happened, and even more every day keeps coming through with things that they're finding. I feel that if someone really wants to explore this further, there are Gnostic texts that are out there. There's the book of Mary Magdalene to read. There's the book of, Thomas the Doubter. There's so much out there. And when the Dead Sea Scrolls came out, one of my favorite verses from it actually was a verse that Jesus said, and he said, you do not need to go to church in order to be with me. You can be under a rock. You can be on top of a mountain. And it gets me every time, because when I have someone tell me, well, if you don't go to church every Sunday, you're going to hell. And I sit there and I'm like, whoa. First of all, judgment, there's that whole thing. Judge not lest thee be judged.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what are we learning?
Yeah. And do you need to throw stones in a glass house?
Right.
Okay. The other thing is, you can be a Sunday Christian where you go for an hour and a half on a Sunday. Does that make you a good person the rest?
And then you
6
go
and a
out
half?
and do all the
And then you're cheating on your wife. You've got prostitutes. You're doing meth in hotel rooms. And these are things that pastors have done in the last 10 or 15 years. So for me, it's about the works that you do on a daily basis and being cognizant of that. The other thing, I got in a really spirited debate once with someone who was total, what I would call a Bible banger. And they told me that if you don't believe in Jesus and God, that you are going to hell. And so I asked a hypothetical question. I said, let's talk about a baby who was born in a remote part of the world where they still have tribes. They have never been exposed to modern day culture. No one even knows they exist, right? In the Amazon jungle or in the bush of Africa, wherever, and even in Siberia. This baby is born. It lives for 15 minutes and it dies. It has never been exposed to religion. No one's ever talked to them about Christianity or anything. Are you telling me that when that baby dies because it doesn't believe in Jesus Christ, that it's going to hell? And this person had the nerve to look at me and said, yes, this is why Christians go on missions. That for me is setting you up to fail. And the God that I believe in would never do that. Never do that. So whether it's Muhammad that you believe in, whether it's Jesus Christ, whether it's Buddha, whatever the entity's name is, under a guise of religion, I have a hard time with religion personally because I feel that it's just there to suppress the masses. We can Google the Nicene Conference and the Catholic Church. But, and that's me. I'm trying not to be mad about old stuff like the Inquisition. I'm still a little upset.
Sound off.
Okay. Yeah. But that, to me, I mean, you can even tell how spirited I get this because it enrages me for someone who sits there, who commits every sin they possibly can, but they go to church for an hour a week. What, they're going to heaven? And yet someone who has been pious, humble, and done everything to help others their entire life, but never set foot in a church, they're going to hell? That makes no sense.
No, yeah.
And this is why I wish people would think deeper about these things before they immediately condemn someone else.
Absolutely.
Because when religion got started, man is putting his interpretation on religion.
Amen.
God didn't say that. Christ didn't say that.
And so a lot of times you also hear people say if you don't abide by or adhere to the rules and the structures of what Jesus Christ says or wherever religion you believe in, whether it's the Quran or the Bible, they say you're going to go to heaven or hell.
Yeah.
Based upon whatever, if you do wrong, then you're going to go to hell. If you abide by God's rules, you're going to go to heaven and live this magical life. And do you feel there is a such thing as heaven and hell?
I do. But I was, again, raised Catholic. But I also think there's a purgatory in there where people are going to go who aren't ready to go straight either way. And there might be, but to me, it's how you live your life. It's how you treat others. I mean, it's this whole thing is what Jacqueline's saying. I could have a different belief system, but it's how I live my life and how I treat others.
Absolutely.
And how I want to be treated. That's kind of the bottom
Actions.
line. Actions, yeah. Actions speak louder than the words.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to Egyptian times. In the Egyptian religion, pre-Christianity, Jewish, Muslim, all of it, before all the major religions were out there. Anubis. I've had a crush on Anubis my entire life, by the way. I just need to put that out there. Love
Boyfriend
him.
in the head.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Always have. Got
Friend in my
statues of him
head.
all over. But Anubis, what in that religion back then, Anubis was the one that when you passed away, when you died, immediately you went to him and he weighed your heart against a feather. And that was what determined which way you were going. And again, that speaks to how old that goes of how you acted and what was truly in your heart dictates, up or down on the elevator when the train has left the building. I don't think it's as clear cut as that. I do feel there's definitely a hell. I feel that there is a heaven, but I don't think the heaven is we all go sit up on a shiny, fluffy cloud with all of our friends and family forever and ever. Amen. Because first of all, that would be incredibly crowded. Secondly, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, think again, I give the example of a baby who's born and lives for 15 minutes. You're telling me that soul's going to go, it lives once. There's no reincarnation. It lives one time for 15 minutes and then it's spending eternity up in heaven?
No, the soul has something to learn, maybe incarnating, because that soul needed to learn the birthing process or experience it. Maybe the mother and father has something to learn from it. Maybe the other child in the family. I mean, that's what you can't judge because you just don't know.
You don't know the reason.
Yeah.
And that leads me into reincarnation, which is another thing that, a lot of, I feel it's so blatant in the different writings, not only in the Quran, but also in the Old Testament, the Torah, as well as all through the Christian Bible as well. It clearly states in their reincarnation. The ancient Egyptians also believed in reincarnation. I know Buddhists definitely do, as well as Hindus and other religions as well. To me, it's just like when people say there are no aliens. To me, that's a giant waste of space. And if God has every hair on your head numbered, why would he create a vast universe and we're the only things in it? That to me, it makes no sense. And the same thing with living once. It makes no sense. So, yes.
So if someone has an abortion, let's just say, would that spirit come back to them automatically, being their parent, if the parent decides to have a child again?
Not necessarily.
Or what are your thoughts about abortion? Is that something that is actually condemned by God? Or is that something that, should be left up to the parent to decide for themselves how they go about handling whether or not they want to be a parent or not?
I think it's a case-by-case situation.
It's a personal choice for the woman.
Not only the choice, but, as far as, well, God could, that's something that you don't know what that child, that spirit that was in there had to experience. Whatever else, I don't believe that should be condemned. It's if the mother says, I don't want her, and, cut it out of me with negative thoughts, now that's another story. But
I also feel it's a case-by-case basis. I could not imagine being a woman if I were raped and ended up pregnant and someone forced me to have that child. And every day that child grows up, I have to look in my rapist's face for the rest of my life. And that's if I'm not able to adopt it out. Then there's the even worse, which is you have this baby, just to quote unquote have the baby, right? Even though it's a rape child. And then you adopt it out and then you don't know what kind of life that kid's going to have. That kid could be from foster home to foster home, could be abused, always wants to know who its parents were and what happened. And then God forbid it actually finds out at one point that its mother was a rape victim. What mental bloop, 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 bad word, is that going to cause for that poor child?
Well, there's so much anguish and guilt on the mother, but then the child. I mean, it's just like there are two lives.
Yes.
You're dumping it all,
dramatically.
So do I feel it should be a form of birth control? Meaning, you chose not to take the pill and then you just want to have abortion every time you get knocked up. I don't agree with that, but that's more of a personal choice, i.e. I just think people should think about consequences, look ahead and try and take action. That's the more, conservative part of my brain saying, okay, this is a potential, just like why we wear safety belts, because we know accidents happen. I don't want to get ejected from the car, so put on my safety belt. You're going to have sex. Use a condom or use birth control. And then sometimes there are times babies pop through. I had a friend who got pregnant on birth control with a condom and spermicide. That child was coming through, whether anybody liked it or
Make
not.
Make it happen any means necessary.
So I definitely agree. Case by case basis. Just same with anything, which goes back to what you said, Jean, about don't judge because we don't know.
Absolutely.
It's hard to do. I judge every day, but I catch myself inside. I do.
We're working human.
We appreciate your honesty, Mama Jean.
You're all a work in progress, Jean, here at the table.
No, I do. And then inside I'll say, wait a minute, you have no idea, but I said it.
Mm-hmm.
So wait, there's another thing. There's a difference between judgment and discernment. And we had a long thing, your dad and I in our group at one time. And I really was very much plagued by that. I mean, if if somebody comes in and they're all drugged out and they're going to stab somebody, and I say, get out of my house. No, that's discernment. I don't agree with that. I don't feel that's correct. That's not what I want for my home. Good and bad. There's discernment. So when you're saying the judgment of somebody, there is a fine line.
Yeah. Well, do you ladies think that there are different spiritual levels? I think me and Jacqueline we've had this discussion a couple of times about how there are different levels of learning. So once you move on from this life, there are other levels that you kind of have to achieve to kind of be perfected
Whatever
again.
your soul needs. Whatever that soul needs. It could be on another planet.
Are there different levels? Is there a certain number of levels that you have to kind of acclimate to get to that highest point? To kind of be like a deity or a god? Or
I don't know about a god, but a higher, we call them ascended masters. Those are those beings who've gone through have experienced every possible part of life. And, excuse me, I've even been told that the drunk on the street that you see could be an ascended master who had to learn that one thing or came here to give you that experience of compassion or whatever.
Absolutely. So, in today's times, I know we have so much going on right now regarding the coronavirus and the protests that are kind of going on. What are your outlooks on this year, 2020, that just needs to end? I just can't wait till it's 2021. But what are your thoughts and opinions about everything that's going on in the world today in regards to our current events?
You can do that one.
Well, I'll kind of start with the COVID virus. I mean, to me, it's horrible. I hate to think of all the people who have died and those that are still in the hospitals fighting for their lives, and other people walking around who have it, don't know they have it, and hopefully everybody's doing the mask and social distancing. But I think the lessons learned is with this shelter in place, people have slowed down. Hopefully they have sheltered in place. And I know for me, even though I was having to learn to work remote, which I'd never planned to do, that was kind of an interesting learning. But I've actually learned I like being in the house by myself. I've actually enjoyed it, and I'm a strong extrovert. But I've gotten more into the meditation, into the yoga, getting more into my spirit guides. I mean, it's quieted me down. And I enjoy going out, and I do daily walks, and I enjoy seeing the families that are out bike riding, the families that are doing things. And my neighbors have all slowed down, and it's just, that is a little bit of a side, what I think maybe we needed to do for the world. The air is better, there's less pollution, and I think we are looking at, do people really have to go into an office? No, they don't. They can work remote and have better balance in their lives.
Yeah. So how do you meditate? What are some of the steps and the keys to meditation? Because I know I struggle with meditation and trying to clear my mind to focus on whatever it is that I need to focus on in order to channel. So
I have the same issue. For me, I do better probably with guided meditations, kind of the apps that are helping me kind of quiet down to do it. But I also have a Tibetan bowl, which I love. Again, it's the vibrations for me. And then that kind of helps me bring in my guides to help me to kind of quiet the mind and then to decide where I need to kind of focus. And then that kind of helps me lead into the manifesting. What do I want to have happen in my life? What am I asking for?
I think going back on 2020 as a whole, it's been a year so far.
It's
been a long year.
It's only June.
2021, please come.
So I see all of this as a positive. And I know a lot of people, if they heard me say that, would say, what? But work with me. So everything since March has been to keep us inside. It's the virus, stay inside, stay home, don't go out. And as an empath, I would like to thank everyone for doing so and slowing down, because it has made my life so much nicer energetically with everyone slowing down. Oh, it's wonderful. The pollution going 60% reduced throughout the world is humongous. The hole in the ozone layer that started the year I was born healed itself in 2 months. That was growing at an exponential rate every single year. They have, for the first time in 400 years, have animals in the canals of Venice right now. They have dolphins have come back, and fish, which they have not had in over 400 years there. The oceans are reviving themselves. I mean, we're seeing wildlife come out. There was this huge surge of baby turtles. We all know how I feel about turtles. But this huge surge of sea turtles that were actually able to lay all these eggs that weren't bothered because people weren't on the beaches. And so I see a lot of the brilliance. I think it slowed a lot of people down. I think it also brought to life that there's a lot of things that we just weren't thinking of. I know personally, with different health stuff I've gone through, I've told people, hey, if you have a cold or a flu, please don't come, don't be around me. And they would show up anyway because selfishness, oh, I wanted to see you. I don't care if I sneeze all over you and get you sick and you're sick for 3 weeks. I wanted to see you. But with this, people are having to see consequences. And I also think it's really nice how we're seeing communities and families get together and support each other and get to the point where they are saying, like, hey, we got to give our nurses and doctors thank you. And even our grocery store workers, be nice to the people who work at the grocery store.
I thank them every time I go in.
I know.
It's a hard job.
It is a hard job. They're not getting paid a whole heck of a lot to be there, and they're working long hours, and they're right in the line of fire. When it comes to the protests, I definitely feel it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I feel it's horrendous that we have to have it get worse. But I love the fact that this many people are getting out. And to be honest, if it wasn't for the coronavirus, this many people would not be able to be out there every day the way that they are, because people are off work. Jobs are closed. People are home. So they're able to go out and do community action. And it is shedding a light on many issues that have been in our society for years, beyond years, ones that so many higher ups had nice little ways to say this isn't happening and poo-poo it. I mean, even Colin Kaepernick, now everyone's having to look at him a couple years later and say, we're sorry. If we had stood up and done something when you called attention to this years ago, instead of shaming him out of a job, we might not have to be burning down cities right now. And although I don't agree with the destruction, I also understand as a collective whole, people are at the point where they're breaking point, saying something needs to change. It is 2020. Why we're dealing with some of the things we're still dealing with now is just beyond me.
Absolutely.
And astrologically, Mama Jean.
Let us know what's coming in 2021, Mama Jean.
Pump your brakes.
Damn.
Sit down and hold on for the ride, ladies and gentlemen.
Ooh, strap on your bootstraps.
No, really. Well, first of all, in Revelations in the Bible, all of this is coming true. I mean, we've known. We've been preparing for it. And then astrologically, everything is coming right in. A lot of this I get from Joni. Some of it I probably would have figured out if I'd seen these in the charts, but she really brings it to the fore. Joni Petrie.
Yeah, Joni Petrie. You can find her on YouTube.
She is spot on.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Okay, so you've been listening.
Yes, I have.
So
took a page out of your book.
It's not only the revelations, but the time is right. Astrologically, too.
Yeah.
I don't think we could have avoided this.
And I foresee the fall of the Catholic Church coming soon.
Oh, well, that's definitely.
So
definitely.
what do you feel like in the Catholic Church is kind of like an issue of why they're going to fall? Like, is there any? Well, I know there's a lot of things, but
I'm sorry, my eyes are super wide as saucers right now.
You can go any direction you want with that. I know. I mean, it's a lot going on.
So for me, there's a couple things. First of all, you want me to go back a couple different lifetimes. Let's talk about the Inquisition, the Nicene Conference, when they chopped up the Bible in order to make sure that what was released to the masses was just enough in order to keep them down so that they could control them easier. Then there's the give us all your money while they live in a marble gold house, while the majority of their parishioners are suffering. They do some good things. I mean, trust me, the orphanages and the monasteries, the nunneries, the Jesuit priests, I always find so refreshing. They are kind of like the Kabbalah followers of the Jewish religion in a way. The Jesuit priests, it's actually why I kind of like the Pope we have now. I've never been a big Pope fan because I don't believe that we have to go to a person to go to God. I believe we go directly ourselves. But this Pope I see, he's come out with a lot of things revolutionary. The pedophilia and the abuse and domination over women has always been an issue for me. But all of those things, I just, when I see people talk about Christianity and then do the exact opposite like that, it makes me just take my head and bang it into a wall about 900 times because I'm not able to understand how you could sit there on a golden throne while your people are in rags and poor and asking them for money for you to keep you in your marble gold house while you hold the Bible and talk to them about Christ's words when Christ's words were give up everything and follow me.
There was a lot of politics with the Catholic Church. A lot of politics. So it's just
that answers the question.
And the burning of the witches and all the other people, and gypsies and different religions. I mean, unfortunately, I feel like in history class we kind of skip over that. Like a lot of people, especially teenage girls, usually remember the Inquisition or the Salem witch trials, but we really, really skip over the 200-something years that the Catholic Church basically went everywhere and said, if you don't believe what we want you to believe, I don't care who you are, you're dying, and taking out entire villages. There were numerous medicine women who led tribes over in Europe that were butchered, and all of their people butchered because they were just living their life. Sorry, I'm still upset.
No, this is what happens when a group of people who are interested in their past lives get together, who have lived through some of this. See, that's again where I think it gets stronger. There's so many ways for someone can do the reincarnation. They can look at past lives. There's so much of why we are here right now and what we're doing.
Yes, absolutely. And in many of our past lives, we are many different things.
Correct.
I kind of like to say we're kind of characters in this universe, in this realm, where we kind of come here to do whatever our mission is to kind of do, and we leave many lives. We're many different races, and that kind of leads me to today, where we have so much race war in the world, not just the United States, but all across the world. And it kind of brings up the topic of George Floyd and how a lot of times, people use race to racially profile Black people and so many other people, ethnicities, and how that's kind of like been a divide amongst humanity for such a long time. And do you feel like race should play a factor in our life, and why is it something that people seem to be so focused on? If we live so many different lives and we're so many different ethnicities, why do you feel like racism has anything to do? Why is it so prevalent today? Is it something that people should just kind of like say, okay, we need to let that go? Or
it started, I think it was the Tower of Babel that, the kings were building, and it got so mad that God just said, I'm going to create all these different languages and colors of people, and you work it out.
And the different tribes.
The
7 different, the 13 different tribes.
So I really feel this is a part of Earth one of Earth's missions, and I think right now, dovetailing in with the last days, it's now or never to get this straight.
I
and try to work it out.
So yes, I mean, definitely going back,
And
old school Bible.
One other thing, some of the people, the quote unquote white people that say they're better, probably in another life they were black.
Or they're going to be in the next life.
That's probably more accurate.
There's also karma we haven't talked about, but karma is
Absolutely.
We can talk about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I was having this conversation with you a couple days ago when we were talking about George Floyd, of how after I found out about what happened to him and what the protests, I've been kind of keeping myself on a news diet. I went outside and I just took a moment and I thanked him in prayer because whether he knew it or not, out here, his spirit came in at this time to live that life in order to have this horrendous death experience, but to be a catalyst to set it off nationally. I mean,
and
one man's death, one man, and the police officer as well. I mean, that's why even out here, obviously what the police officer did was wrong and it was horrendous, but even that police officer's soul came in agreeing to do what he did.
Exactly.
And George Floyd agreed, I'm going to take the hit on this. I will go through this horrendous death because change needs to happen. Now, granted, there are different races. You and I are different colors, right? We have different hair. There's different things about our bodies, maybe, like with skincare and stuff, right? That you might need that I might not. Or, I mean, I always tell the story when I was very little. I was like 4 or 5. I was in the hair dye aisle with my mom and I saw this beautiful woman on this box with Jerry curl and I wanted my hair to look like hers. So I asked my mom if I could get that. And she said, no. And, now that I'm older, obviously I understand why.
Explain why.
Yeah, well, I would have looked like I was dipped in an oil slick. But that being said, I think it's beautiful that we are all different. And it's kind of funny because I hear this from white people a lot of, oh, well, white people, you can always tell them apart. We look so different. But other races, they see them, and I'm just going to speak on it with Hispanics and Asians and sometimes with blacks. Well, sometimes they all look alike. And I sit there and I'm like, because you're not looking at the person. You're looking at a general tone.
Absolutely.
So why is it I can go in a mall and I can point out my friend, no matter what, in a sea of people, it doesn't, that doesn't matter. It's because you're looking at who the person is. And I feel if we got to the point where we looked at everyone as a human being and a person and wanted to know their backstory or even just kind of generally accepted certain things, like you're a female, you and I have gone through similar experiences in our life, maybe not exactly the same, but let's face it, there's certain things females go through that males don't. So instantly we have an instant common ground. I feel if a huge alien spacecraft came down right now in the midst of all this bananas craziness that we're going through, if that happened, my prayer and hope is that everyone would stop all this, you're that, whatever, political color, doesn't matter, any of it, because now we're all human beings. And whether or not they want to invade us or they're just, stopping by, beep, beep, saying hi. I think that's why sometimes I feel like I wish more people would think about aliens and things like that, because any differences between us are pretty small when you think that we're not the only ones out there.
Absolutely.
I can tell you how to stop this big thing, hullabaloo, right now. Seriously, the media don't cover any of it.
Yes.
Those protesters will go home.
Not necessarily, though, because unfortunately that's what happened during Kaepernick is they stopped covering it and nothing changed, which led to the next...
I'm talking about the looters and the Antifa and the far left that are hired. I mean, that's a known thing. They've got that is a known fact.
Right, of
they
course.
are being hired. And
Right. There are layers and layers. We're talking kind of bigger picture, though, on all of this, is that the people who feel they need to go out and why people are angry right now, that core issue.
That part, yeah. The good part of it.
The good part of it, exactly, is that change needs to happen.
Yeah.
There's always going to be people who are sublimating. I mean, look, we've had spies, as long as the world's been around. Mm-hmm. And there's always people who want to get in there and do some bad or drudge up some stuff for personal gain or their country's gain or whatever. And obviously, things are so confused now. But I feel like if people realize that every one of us are in this world together, we're all going through something, just on varying degrees, and actually gave a shit about each other as people, we would not be having these things happen on a consistent basis.
I'm talking about the destruction part of it.
In order sometimes to rebuild,
I think that's part of the.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, it is
in the Hindu religion. There's Kali, and she's feared and she's respected. She's the goddess of destruction, and she's kind of scary. Let's not face it. I mean, whenever you hear her coming around, it's like, oh shit. But she comes, she raises it all to the ground, and then builds it back up beautifully. We need destruction in order for something new to come of it. So although, yes, there are a lot of horrible things.
No, all I'm saying is if you really want to cut it, it's like anything. You stop the media giving attention to the bad guys. I'm talking about the bad stuff that's going on. As far as the protesting for the rights, I totally agree with that. Totally. But I guess it goes together. So,
yeah. Well, you did bring up a good comment, or you mentioned about karma. Now, I've had my fair share of karma.
We all do.
I've had my fair share of karma and being in karmic relationships with people. And not even realizing that I was in karmic relationships and dealing and tolerating with things that I'm like, okay, I never would tolerate this ever. What's wrong with me? Why am I dealing with a person that's so crappy? What is it about this person that is just so magnetic that I'm just so drawn to? And what are your thoughts about karmic relationships and karma? Why is it that we have that? Why is it that we meet some of those people in certain lifetimes where we need to kind of is it like a mission that we need to fulfill in order to make ourselves whole again? Or why is there such thing as karma?
But is that the soul contract type of thing again?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's layers within layers of the soul contract, what you're talking about. There's things that our souls come in order to do.
Right.
Right? And then sometimes it's our souls are going to talk ahead of time and say, hey, you and I need to meet each other in this life. This is what we need to do together. Sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's not so fun. It's always going to be beneficial not only to the two people who are there, but usually it has a lasting impact out. So,
well, there are lessons learned for both.
Correct.
Which we may not understand at the time. But it's interesting you talk about relationships. A couple of years ago, I was dating this guy, interesting guy, but I had such an attraction towards him. And yet I just thought on so many different levels, he's not really the best guy for me. And then talking to Jacqueline later on, I said, what is it about this guy? And because we would break up, a year would go by, I'd run into him, we'd kind of go out again. And yet I kept thinking, this isn't really good for long-term for both of us. And it turned out past life connection.
Wow.
He was a smaller child, and I was kind of running a boarding house, and he was one of the kids there. So, again, it was like a little bit, I always felt taking care of him. And that explained a lot. Once I got some additional information from Jacqueline, now I could clearly say it's a past life thing. And we've met, and I still see him occasionally, but I'm really clear now with
boundary lines,
and it's not serving me anymore, and I move on. But that's the thing. Sometimes you meet people and you're instantly like, where do I know you from? That happens, and that's just for me. It's a past life connection that, again, we're connecting on this life, and again, for another reason.
So would that almost be kind of thought of as a soulmate is like a karmic relationship kind of.
No, I don't think so.
Well,
So what are the different
with group souls?
Yeah.
And so there's a whole bunch of people that it's a group thing, and somehow you're going to run into that person, or that person comes from another group soul to fulfill something here. The whole law of karma is you are going to experience what you made that other person experience. So it can be so many things.
When you brought up earlier about, some of the white people who act like they're better than anyone else because they're white. And then when you had mentioned they were probably black in a past life.
Could be.
In a way, if they were, let's say they were black in a past life and they experienced horrible racism, etc. And in their next life they reincarnate and now they're white. You could be seeing some of that bravado come from almost innately feeling like, thank God I'm not, going through X, Y, and Z anymore. Or it could be they felt in their past life so downtrodden on by the white man that all of a sudden now they're stepping into the white man's shoes and seeing the different perspective. I read this one thing once and it was beautiful, that every single life on the planet that ever has been and ever will be is all one soul going through these different experiences all at the same time. So although I'm sitting here, I'm also you sitting there interviewing and you sitting over there and anyone who's done anything to any of us, all of those people as well. And that would be kind of a easier way to explain the group soul karmic that you were talking about. There are some things too where you just did something super shitty and sometimes karma is really quick, right? Trust me, I've seen it.
backhand you?
Yeah, it's really, really quick. And you know what? Those are the little karmic things that be grateful for, that it was quick. It's when it's not. It's the people. And I remember meeting someone when I was younger and it was everywhere they went, they just shit and messed up everything.
Oh, Lord.
Everyone, their entire life, just everywhere they went. They were just like a destruction roller coaster.
Like a wrecking ball.
And people didn't even believe in anything, right? Would even say, man, karma's going to get that person. And it almost never did.
Wow.
Still to this day that I keep tabs. And I sit there and I think there's either two things. Either that person was the most pious, beautiful soul in a past life who's just getting away with everything now.
Or they chose to do that. They chose to be that person.
Or it also could be that they're going to catch karma either later in life or in their next life. So you don't know. And again, it all comes back to, why are we judging? Why would we look at anyone instantly and say, oh, this, that, the other, these snap judgments about people? And especially with skin color, I mean, that makes absolutely no sense to me because, I mean, there's gradations of color in every race, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, so something like that to me is just like not liking someone because they have a mole on their face. Like, oh, I hate everyone with moles. Like, okay, that's random, right? Like, doesn't make sense, but okay, that's your thing. But again, it goes back into judgment. I mean, you could see a man in the grocery store who's very mean and he kicks a dog and you just think, God, what a horrible person. You don't know what made him that way. You don't know if he served 5, different tours in a war and he's got PTSD and he's messed up. Like, that's why you can't just snap judge. And unfortunately, we live in a world, especially with social media, everyone wants to snap judge everything. Everyone wants to say they're right and pick on everyone else. I learn something new every single day. I listen to conservative news. I listen to liberal news. I listen to everyone. I try not to shut conversations down by saying I know it and that's it, because I don't. And it's also good to know what other opinions are. You're never going to grow if it's only you and your little bubble and your belief system.
Absolutely. And, also with me being an empath and all, a lot of people also ask me, they're like, so, like, you know your whole purpose of being here and you know everything, right? So, like, why are you here? Like what? So you know everything. So what's the point? And it's like, well, no, obviously I don't, because if I did, I wouldn't be here. We're all here to learn things on an individual level. and there's no limit, regardless if you're, on this earth to be a, helper of God, or, whatever your calling is on this earth. Being a psychic doesn't mean that you're not going to be face challenges or adversity or racism or sexism or any of the isms. We all are human at the end of the day, and we should never judge people just because the color of their skin or their gender or their sexual orientation
or where they grew up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that people want to judge by now, or what they do for a living.
Yeah.
I mean, garbage men make a humongous salary first and foremost.
Well, all
Just throwing out the trash.
Just saying.
Is eliminate a garbage man, and you'll have a lot of feeling and
that actually happened in New York at one point, and New Yorkers started loving their garbage men when it was 5 stories high in front of the building. Yeah. I mean, honestly, whenever someone says, "Oh, well, you say you're psychic, or you're this or you're that, so you should have it all figured out," the answer back that I typically give, because I have heard that a time or two, is, how fun would that be if I knew everything that's to come? I would be bored shitless. What's the point in reading a book if you already know the ending?
Absolutely. That's how I feel.
Well, but that also goes into kind of, enjoy the journey each day versus, the goal in, 2 weeks, 4 years, or whatever. I mean, that's it. It's the journey, one step at a time. How do you live life?
Life is a highway. I want to ride it all night long.
Song.
I think it is.
So, what is the difference between a karmic relationship, a soulmate, and a twin flame?
Oh, I think the word soulmate gets overused a lot. I personally know that I've had at least 5 different people in my life. 3 of them were not romantic at all, that I would say were soulmates. That's how close the connection was. That's how close it felt. Some of them, I would say actually 4 of them, I don't even see or talk to anymore. But when they were in my life, that's how close it was. Did it last? No. And we were just friends, like one of them was romantic, and that one I would say was very karmic. Typically karmic relationships, like you were saying, you're in them, you kind of don't know why. You almost have blinders on sometimes. Like there was this one, he was ugly. I'm not going to lie. He was not a cute man. But at the time, oh my God, he walked on water. To me, he was just fanned me down with the hose. It was too much. But I mean, when I look at pictures of him now, I'm like, what was I thinking?
Well, I've been there before.
But again, that relationship had to happen in order to spawn a whole bunch of other events. So when you are able, I feel, when I take
a soul connection.
When you take a step back from it and you can look at it from like a third party view or like an overview, you can usually see what it's all about. Twin flames, I mean, I feel those are rare.
Well,
what is it? Define that. What is it?
God created a male and female in one. Okay.
Yin and yang.
One being, and they split off. Purposely, they split off, and when they meet again, it's not. I mean, I've been told it's pretty rare on this one.
So not everyone has a twin flame.
No, you do. You do.
You're saying
whether
you do?
Whether you meet again,
you may not.
Story.
You may never meet him in this lifetime.
And if you meet in this life, it's always a struggle. It's never that easy. But there will be an automatic. You've met. I don't know. My husband and I were supposedly twin flames, and I can tell you there was this incredible oneness, but it was also
not the easiest.
No, it wasn't the easiest, and there was a learning to get that I don't even know how to describe it.
So I
don't even know how to describe
it. There's like it's not magnetism. It's like you feel like you're finally whole with the person.
Yes.
And even though I'm very big on, you're always whole when you go into a relationship because 1 and 1 make 2, not 1. But it would almost be like you're home when you find this person.
And the soul grows together.
But they're not always the most easy relationships. There's usually a lot of stuff either happening around them or together,
One pulls
etc.
up the other, this type of thing. But
Okay.
it's not something that is always, that you always meet on this planet. No.
Okay.
But it's overused. It's over-glorified.
Yeah, I agree. I hear that a lot. I hear a lot of people talk about, because everybody thinks that they come here to meet their soulmate ultimately. It's like, at the end, I'll meet my soulmate one day. Hopefully, he'll be this Casanova on a little white
But
horse.
if that is your husband and you feel that way, you could say that's a soulmate. But, as anything, they exaggerate. They get these words and they exaggerate it in the books and all. So, I'm going to meet my... I don't hear twin flame as much, but I know that's out there. But the thing with a soulmate could be you're a soulmate. It's not necessarily a male-female thing.
I think Sex and the City had it best, that your soulmate does not have to be someone you're romantically inclined
Exactly.
with.
Yeah, I would agree. And so Trump, he got his Space Force going on. We had the dragon that lifted up to space. So what are your thoughts about aliens? Do they exist?
Yes.
Okay. If so, are we further away from them or are we amongst them?
Amongst.
Okay.
They're right here, right now.
A lot of men.
I would love to experience an alien. I have to say that could be on my bucket list.
A lot of them are in Washington, D.C., too.
Oh.
A lot.
So what do you think their mission is there?
Trying to help this planet not blow itself up. And also, too, and a lot of our technology has come from them. If you want to watch something really interesting, it's, what's the one? It's
Ancient Aliens?
Is that the one that had about the presidents?
Yes.
Was it Ancient?
Ancient Aliens
Ancient
is
Aliens.
Is that on
fantastic.
Netflix?
It is
No,
on
it's on
Netflix.
regular.
It's on Comcast. It's on Netflix and Hulu.
And there's one about the presidents.
I'm going to watch
They
that
all
tonight.
knew.
I
Started.
highly recommend to anybody Ancient Aliens, even if you don't even have to start from way back when. You can start with any of them because they're individual episodes. Back in 2008 or 2009, they had their very first one. It was a one-off. It was a 2-hour episode one-off. And I tape recorded it. And so I got up. I was supposed to go out with my girlfriends. I put it on while I was doing on my makeup. I ended up having half an eyebrow on, called my girlfriend, said, I'm canceling the night. I'm not going out. And
you were
just
hooked
sat
on
there and watched
they're
everything.
incredible.
I watched it twice. I watched 4 hours of Ancient Aliens. And I prayed, oh God, I hope they make a show of this. And they finally did. And I have been hooting and hollering about it ever since. But
Go on demand.
there is an episode called Time Before Time. And it's on this season, so season 15 or 16. Anybody who has any questions about that theory, watch that episode because that will answer so many questions about civilizations that have come before.
So there is, in fact, life on other planets.
Yes.
Totally.
And here.
I believe.
Well, yes, we're in life. We're here right now in the moment.
How would we feel if we were not the majority on this planet?
Man, I don't know. There might be some more protests going on about that. If that was the case.
Now, that is an interesting thought there, Jacqueline.
It is an interesting thought. Please do tell.
Ruminate on it.
Do tell. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Just think about it. I mean, I believe aliens are real. Like I said, it's a giant waste of space. If not, I definitely believe they're also here. I believe not only in people that look like you and me, but I also believe in different forms. I also think that there's different dimensions that coexist with us at current day. And I think this is sometimes why people see ghosts or entities or things. They're just going about their business. They live here too, just kind of like superimposed on us. Like we don't know they're there. We don't know. They don't. They might know about us. I don't know, but
I'm getting goosebumps. I don't know what's going on in here.
I think if people thought it goes back to this old adage of when we used to think everything revolved around Earth, right? And then all of a sudden someone said, "Hey, actually, we revolve around the sun," and they were heretics. Remember, the first 4 guys that said that were burned at the stake. It didn't go well. So again, I go back to religion just suppressing the masses, but there was so much science and technology that was repressed because people couldn't speak out or do these experiments or things to grow because they were so dominated and would be killed. But now I love the explosion of technology we're having. I think we're actually way more advanced, not only within our governments, but also I think there's things coming up that are going to take us to a whole nother level. And I hope people open their eyes.
Absolutely. So do we feel like the Earth, planet Earth, will be inhabitable anytime soon? And that's the reason why Trump went up to space and had the space mission go up there. So that way there could be other forms of life on other planets? Or is there something else that's seeping underneath the surface?
I think there's possible attack, or other like Russia and China. They're up there in space too, and I think it's becoming very not only political but competitive.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a tri-prong answer there. So there's the physical, like what's happening here on our little planet. There's definitely a war over satellites in space. And
because when Congress passed Space Force, amid all this hubble bubble, the Democrats, they passed it unanimously, very quietly.
Correct. And they wouldn't add another branch of government with that much funding if there was no reason for it. The second
they have
is
their flag, a new flag, and
I mean, obviously there are the connections with aliens. The Pentagon has come out and confirmed it. NASA's already confirmed that we have deep space transmissions that we've already gotten. We've gotten over 200 of them. With all the things that come out actually during the pandemic with the shelter in place, everyone's looking at coronavirus and the government's leaking all this stuff saying, oh, well, we told you, it's not our fault, you guys didn't hear about it. The third is there are definitely things headed for this planet that we understand they're coming. There are asteroids that are on its way. They're already talking they're going to completely obliterate Earth. They're on a trajectory path. So yeah, we need to get our shit in gear so we can prevent that. And also with population growth expanding and with resources dwindling. So if we can get on up to Mars or, even get resources like helium for the moon, everyone forgetting the helium shortage that happened a year and a half ago.
Right.
I think so.
And now all of a sudden we seem to have helium. We're fine. But how did that work out? Well, the moon has helium. So
I didn't even realize
so there's a lot of different things. And I mean, in order to terraform Mars, it wouldn't be really hard. We just got to get stuff there. Or are we already there?
Probably already there.
There's so much we don't know.
Exactly. And that's okay. I'm actually on board with the government not sharing everything. I think some people's heads would explode. There's too many people, conspiracy theory about everything. I mean, I could say I want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and someone's going to say I'm working with the Russians about this. And, just
peanut butter.
Right?
Where's you get those peanuts from?
Exactly.
Get the peanut butter.
Yeah, I'm trying to kill everyone with a peanut allergy. I'm like, oh my God, I was just hungry. Okay. So that's why I definitely feel that, the government should keep certain things under wraps. I don't think everything is for human consumption.
We're not ready for all this. Yeah.
And this is something that's kind of come up a lot of times for me when I'm talking to people about in these challenging times where there's so much going on in the world and people trying to keep their sanity and their mental health kind of, intact. Do you feel like mental health is something that's a chemical imbalance, or is it something that's a glitch within the lineage of people? Like maybe something from a past life?
Fascinating questions. Yeah, I think there's a couple different answers. There are people who are definitely born with chemical imbalances.
I agree.
I've met some. They get the right chemical compound, the right medication, they're fine. There are some that it's, unfortunately trauma, PTSD, especially repeated as a child, it really affects the brain and the brain does not grow, and then of course there's normal things like the mother had a substance or something in her, and it can be something easy as like that DMT stuff from back in the day, with all the different chemicals and stuff we use now. as well as psychic attack, and just in general, people not being prepared for what we're going through these times. And this is a lot. Let's face it. Like, you have to be pretty damn grounded right now to be able to maintain.
Well, and I
through
think
these
what's
times.
happening is there's a lot of job loss. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of people furloughed. I mean, you have this whole fear about being infected with this COVID. I mean, I just think this is such a stressful time for people that if you don't manage stress well, this is just amplifying people.
And I definitely feel actually more for the 30 and under crowd, because 30 and over still had that time where the internet was kind of in the beginnings. But the 30 and under really were raised with it. And with that comes all the, through their teenage and 20 years, all the focus is get likes on social media, look pretty, look this, show that you're doing all this. And then all of a sudden everything stops. So what do you do now if you have no structure or basis for your life? All of that kind of came tumbling down in a way.
Absolutely. So do we feel like the rest of the year in 2020 is just going to be pretty tumultuous, or do you see things looking up for us in this year?
Tumultuous.
Yes, people who've lost jobs. I work with companies that are laying off for furlough, and what's happening, especially in the hospitality industry, for example, hotels, airlines have furloughed people for 3 months. They're now coming back, projecting 6 months down, because who's going to get on an airplane? No one's traveling right now. No one's vacationing. And then the cascading effect of the food, the catering, of anyone who works for the air. I mean, no, I think through the rest of the year. And some companies are all working remote still for the rest of the year. I mean, it's
and schools. There's a lot of schools that won't open.
You'll just get on there and, oh, wow, that's beautiful.
I feel like I can just turn on my TV and I'm in a virtual vacation anyways. So I guess we've already tried that.
Well, some of the cruise lines have really good specials now. If
anyone wants to go on a floating petri dish in the sea, have at it.
No, but look at those Peloton ads where they're doing this and they're seeing the big thing, the big screen, and they're going like this and they're beating each other, and it shows the Machu Picchu and all that, and they're climbing it, and it's all virtual.
A staycation. You can learn to have fun at home.
Absolutely.
And it's also about, I feel like a lot of people got in this mindset of entertainment, right? If it wasn't TV and movies, it was people, it was online, it was everywhere. And then we voted in a president who people pretty much said, well, he entertains me, instead of realizing, even politically what was going on. And so now we're kind of stuck with all those choices. And now all of a sudden, entertainment industry, nothing's been shot in the past 3 months because everything's been shut down. All the late night shows and everything are doing it from home. So entertaining me isn't, we now have to learn how to entertain ourselves.
People are playing board games.
Yeah, that's where I hope people will look a little deeper.
Absolutely. So going into 2021, because I think we've all come to the conclusion we're throwing away 2020. What are your hopes for humanity and us as a whole moving forward?
Well, hopefully we'll be a little more evolved and we'll have learned some lessons. I don't think it's going to be easier, only because I go with the revelations and what's coming up. Plus, astrologically, it doesn't look like it's getting much better. I don't mean to be a doomsday, but I'm just saying it's not going to get easier because we still have to go, through the Antichrist days and all that, and that's more kind of a one world government type of thing. So who knows?
I think it's definitely going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
But again, with every down, there's an up. So, I rattled off all those things that had happened during the shelter in place that are positive. Even with all these protests, I mean, there's a lot of positivity out there. There are people who are helping each other. There are conversations that need to be had. There are people's minds who all of a sudden are waking up. I mean, I saw on the news the other day that all these books about, how to not be a racist and what is racism have sold out on off the shelves. And there was one bookstore, he said we had to cut people off after 3,000 back orders of the same book.
Wow.
And I thought, you know what, that's good though.
It is.
If people even had a question and they want to go out and read a book, because we know not everyone reads books anymore, thank God, because there's a whole older generation that was still raised with segregation that we forget. These are the people who are in power right now. I mean,
See,
our president was alive.
I understand Joe Biden and Trump. I get where they're coming from. Do I agree with some of the stuff they say? No, and Joe Biden's just as bad. He's worse. If you go back and see some of the videos, he was worse. But anyway, these guys come from a time when everything was kind of like, oh, flip it and this and this and that. And, you know, you guys don't understand that.
No.
And you don't want it. And it's good that we are trying to get rid of some of that.
Right. So, I mean, they were also from a day where women stayed home and took care of the house and got spanked if they burned dinner.
A woman's place was in the oven.
Any man spanks me and it's not a happy time, we're going to have a problem.
But I think the other plus is I think the younger generation is getting more involved.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll be voting in mass.
Yes.
Hopefully, I mean, they're out, I think, leading some of these protests. I mean, I think that's...
If there is an election.
Do you think there will be another election?
No.
Why?
I don't think there's going to be an election in November.
I do.
In September and October, there's a lot coming this way. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit. What are you thinking?
Oh, there's a lot.
Yeah. Well, you saw her tapes, yeah. But not only that, those configurations astrologically are very dramatic. Those haven't happened in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And they're all happening right now.
Yeah. I mean, here's what I want to say. It will get worse, but there's growth. We all get stronger. We get more, maybe a little more solidified in what our real thoughts about things are. So with all the destruction that's going on in 2020, there will be reconstruction in 2021.
Yes, good girl.
2022-ish, yeah.
For the better.
Exactly, for the better.
I mean, right now it's hard. Right now it's rough.
The pendulum swings,
Yeah.
right? So right now we're at one end of the pendulum being all the way up here to, everything's DEFCON 2 for everyone at all times. And then eventually it's going to kind of swing. And I mean, that even carries down to not only how angry people are still, which they should be, but also to the laws that they're trying to pass in order to quell some of the anger and fix things. They're not always going to get it right out of the box. I mean, very few people do, right? So there might be some, we've got to restructure some things, etc. But
it is movement in the right, better direction.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank my lovely guests for joining me this evening or this afternoon. It's been lovely. I enjoyed your input. Well, everybody stay tuned for next week's episode, and thanks for everybody tuning in.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining Vibe Selection with Kyra. Come vibe out with us again next time and hear the latest on today's hot topics. Find us on Instagram at I am Kyra Mahoney or donate at www.patreon.com/vibeselection.